Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the last verse of Canto 3. So it's Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 51, the last verse of Canto 2. Start with word for word, for each word. Sutta,
Sutta,
Uvacha, Ragya, Parikshita, Pristo, Yad, Avochan, Maha, Muni, Tad, Vo, Vidasye, Shrinuta, Ragya, Prasnanusrata. We'll do each verse, each line. Sutta Uvacha, Ragya Parikshita Pristo, Yadavachan Mahamuni, Tadvo Vidasye Shrinuta, Ragya Prasnanusarata, Sutta Uvacha, Ragya Parikshita Pristo, Yadavachan Mahamuni, Tadvo Vidasye Shrinuta, Ragya Prasnanusarata, Sutta Uvacha, Ragya Parikshita Pristo, Yadavachan Mahamuni, Tadvo Vidasye Shrinuta, Ragya Prasnanusarata,
Sutta Uvacha, Ragya Parikshita Pristo, Yadavachan Mahamuni, Tadvo Vidhasye Shrinuta, Ragya Prasnanusarata, Sutta Uvacha, Ragya Parikshita Pristo, Yadavachan Mahamuni, Tadvo Vidhasye Shrinuta, Rajna Prashina Nushrita,
Ragya Prasnanusarata.
Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Rajna Parikshit Kristo.
Rajya Parikshita Pristo.
Yad Avochan Mahamuni.
Yadavachan Mahamuni.
Thago Vidhasye Shrinuta.
Tago Vidasya Srinuta.
Rajna Prasnana Nusarata.
Rajya Prasnanusarata.
Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Rajna Parikshita Pristo.
Rajya Parikshita Pristo.
Yad Avochan Mahamuni.
Yadavachan Mahamuni.
Thago Vidasya Shrinuta.
Tago Vidasya Srinuta.
Rajna Prasnanusarata.
Rajya Prasnanusarata. Anyone here or online like to chant the verse?
Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Rajna Parikshita Pristo.
Rajya Parikshita Pristo.
Yadavochan Mahamuni.
Yadavachan Mahamuni.
Tadvo Bidhasya Srinuta.
Tago Vidasya Srinuta.
Rajna Prasnanusarataha.
Rajya Prasnanusarata.
Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Rajya Parikshita Kristo.
Rajya Parikshita Pristo.
Yadavochan Mahamuni.
Yadavachan Mahamuni.
Tadvo Bidasya Shrinuta.
Tago Vidasya Srinuta.
Rajya Prasnanusarata.
Rajya Prasnanusarata. Krishna, do the word for word. Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Sri Sutta Goswami replied.
Sri Sutta Goswami replied.
Ragya,
Ragya.
by the king.
By the king.
Parikshita,
Parikshita.
by Parikshit.
By Parikshit.
Prista,
Prista.
as asked.
As asked.
Yat,
Yat.
what?
What?
Avochat,
Avochat.
spoke.
Spoke.
Mahamuni,
Mahamuni.
the great sage.
The great sage.
Tat,
Tata.
that very thing.
That very thing.
Va,
Va.
unto you.
Unto you.
Abhidasye,
Abhidasya.
I shall explain.
I shall explain.
Shrinuta,
Shrinuta.
please hear.
Please hear.
Ragya,
Ragya.
by the king.
By the king.
Prashna,
Prashna.
question.
Question.
Anusarata,
Anusarata.
in accordance with.
In accordance with.
Translation. Sri Sutta Goswami explains, I shall now explain to you the very subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively. Purport. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Any question that is put forward may be answered by quoting the authorities, and that satisfies the saner section. That is the system even in the law court. The best lawyer gives evidence from the past judgments of the court without taking much trouble to establish his case. This is called the Parampara system. And learned authorities follow it without manufacturing rubbish interpretations. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Ananir Adi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Brahma Samhita 5.1. Let us all obey the Supreme Lord, whose hand is in everything, without exception. Thus, in the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions, into the second canto. Into the second canto, Ki Jai.
Right.
It's a celebration to finish a canto. In this reading.
Started 4 years ago, this canto, something like that.
4 years for this canto. So 4 years, a culmination of 4 years, many classes. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padaya Bhujanaaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Purchani Nirvashisa Sunyavadi Prasthati Siddhani. All right, so it's a nice way to end the canto. Prabhupada ends the sentence with this verse: "Let us all obey the Supreme Lord, whose hand is in everything, without exception." So I want to honor the men here. We have men here, some in religious groups, spiritual groups, attendance, and in classes and church and functions like that. Usually more women attend than men, you know, most usually. Online, I think we have more women than men. So maybe we're about mixed, but yeah, I want to honor the men for being here, for showing up. Also, Sattva the Sattva Bhakti community is very female-centric, very heavy feminine. You know, I've heard that feedback. You know, that's Bhakti yoga circles, heavy feminine. So I want to honor the men here for being here, for being leaders, and that men are meant to be the spiritual master, spiritual leader of our families, of our relationships, communities. And so the best leadership is through example, the Acharya principle, through example. So I want to honor you men for being here. Hare Krishna. All right, so Sutta Goswami is speaking here. So Sutta Goswami and the author of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasudev, who is a literary incarnation of Krishna. Speak louder. Oh.
That would be nice. We can hear
Microphone.
For the future, we should get a microphone for the kitchen to hear.
So, Sri Sutta Goswami is speaking, and this is being given to us. The author of Srimad Bhagavatam is Srila Vyasudev, who is a literary incarnation of Krishna. And so Vyasudev is having a conversation with us. And his conversation with us is about Sutta Goswami's conversation. Sutta Goswami is having a conversation with Sanaka Rishi, the head of the assembly at Naimisharanya. Sutta Goswami's conversation is about Srila Sukadev's Goswami's conversation with Maharaj Parikshit and the banks of the Ganges. Maharaj Parikshit is getting ready to leave his body. And so here this verse is telling that next we're going to have a conversation about Sukadev Goswami's conversation. So Sukadev Goswami is going to have a conversation with Maharaj Parikshit about the conversation between King Vidura and Maitreya Rishi. So it's a conversation about a conversation about a conversation. Earlier in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it was Srila Vyasudev giving us a conversation about Sutta Goswami having a conversation about Srila Sukadev Goswami having a conversation about Narada Muni and Brahma conversation. So now we're going to have a conversation today about these conversations. Srila Prabhupada is giving us a conversation in the purports. He's speaking with us. He's having a conversation. This word conversation, I looked up a little bit. So I think it's conversation, the theme of my class, conversation. And so I won't say too much. I didn't get that much about it, but just the words con, together, verse. These are verses. So being together with these verses, being together, and also conversation indicates, especially in English, it's intimate, and there's intimacy there. Actually, I think even like at some point in English, conversation was used for like sexual intercourse, like to be in conversation. So it's an intimate, there's an intimate connotation, and especially at least in English, conversation. So being together, also conversation was like, in English at least, being together in the same household, in the same unit, the same area. There's connotations like that. So we're gonna have a conversation. I appreciate that. Whenever dear Govinda asks if we'd like to lead class, it's class and discussion. We're leading class and discussion. We're not just giving a class. We're gonna have a conversation about it. I can remember in church, there was much conversations in church. Church is kind of my growing up in church. Jim Wood's joining.
Yeah.
Jim Wood.
Man
Okay.
body.
So in the church, it's like there's not a conversation. It's a one-way street, one-way street. And there's so much richness in the discussion, so much aliveness in conversation, having conversation. So Prabhupada is giving us a conversation here in his purport. So this is the purports of Prabhupada's conversation with us about Vyasadev's conversation, about Sutta Goswami's conversation, about Sukadev's conversation with King Vidura, and soon we're going to King Vidura and Maitreya Rishi's conversation. And Prabhupada's absorbed in the conversations of the previous acharyas. Prabhupada's absorbed in conversations, both in written commentaries of the previous acharyas, and just as through the Parampara, and just internally. Of course, Krishna is dictating. Prabhupada said that Krishna is dictating every word that he writes in these purports. So that's an inner conversation between Krishna and Prabhupada that's happening. So Prabhupada's absorbed in these conversations of the previous acharya. It's like Jim's talking to his dog, maybe. Hare Krishna. He's having a conversation. Jim's having a conversation. I just put you on mute, Jim. Thank you for being here, Jim. And so Prabhupada's absorbed in the conversations of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Gora Kishore Das Babaji and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Jagannath Das Babaji and Krishna Kaviraj Goswami, Das Goswami, and conversations with Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and the conversations with Ishvara Puri, Madhavendra Puri. So this is the Parampara. This is the Parampara. This is one big conversation. This one big conversation coming back from Krishna himself. So we want to be just lining up our conversation with this one big conversation of the Parampara. So if we want to be successful, Prabhupada recommends to be successful, to be in a Parampara. We want to be having the same conversation that Krishna was having with Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma was having with Narada Muni, and Narada Muni was having with Vyasadeva, and it's down the chain of just of like succession. So we can be involved in conversations. Really, conversation is the oldest. It can go along with eating and sleeping and mating and defending. As long as those things have been happening, there's been conversation happening. To the Vedic version, there's been conversation happening, and conversation is essential to human interactions, human living. It's, now we have lots of entertainment, but really our entertainment is just conversations. We read a book, there's conversations in the book. Movies are about conversations between people, and TV shows are conversations between people. Texting, we're having text conversations. Social media is a lot of different conversations, people commenting. So having a conversation is like the oldest, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, form of pastime, form of enjoyment, form of spending time, and form of relating with each other is having a conversation. So we can be involved in, we have the experience of being in conversations that are uplifting and enlivening. We feel more inspired. Then we have the experience of being in conversations that can be draining and not inspiring or frustrating or angering. So in Sattva Tov, we look at the quality of our communication. It's also the quality of our conversations, the coaching. Ashwani's joining. Jai. I welcome Ashwani. And so we look at the quality of our conversations. That's really a coaching conversation. In the seminar, it's a lot of conversations happening, and maybe in dyad form, or the facilitator having a conversation with the participant. So there's an art and a science to conversation. And Jim said speed up. That's what his thing. I don't know if he meant to do that. So there's an art and a science to conversation. You could do having conversation in different modes and material nature. In tamas, you have a tamasic ignorance, conversation in ignorance. We can have a conversation in rajas, passionate conversations. We can have a sattvic conversation in the mode of goodness. And then through the parampara, we get these transcendental conversations, fully spiritual conversations beyond the modes of material nature. So we're going to have a conversation today, and could go even a step further that we post these classes online. And then other people hear them. And then I've had a conversation, I know with Devin, we're having a conversation about a class that maybe one of us was at, the other one wasn't, or maybe neither of us were at. So we're having a conversation about a conversation in the class about Srila Prabhupada's conversation with the previous Acharya's conversation, about Vyasadev's conversation, about Sutta Goswami's conversation, about Sukadeva Goswami's conversation, about next was going to be about Vidura and Maitreya Rishi. So it's kind of far out. That's the parampara. That's the parampara system, is to be engaged in the conversation, coming from Krishna originally down to the parampara, and to be within that conversation. And so Prabhupada says here that this is the parampara system. Any question that is put forward may be answered by quoting the authority, and that satisfies the saner section. That is the system even in the law court. The best lawyer gives evidence from the past judgments of the court without taking much trouble to establish his case. We don't need to invent a new conversation. Not that these conversations, like, how could we be having a conversation about a conversation about a conversation? That seems, isn't that kind of, but is that bewildering? Is that like mundane, like a conversation? Is it gossipy? Is it gossip? Oh, he said this, and then she said that, and then they said that. But no, we get the experience just by reading, by being absorbed in Srimad Bhagavatam. We get the experience. It's transformational. It's enlivening. So so it's ever fresh, even though it's conversation about a conversation about a conversation spoken a long time ago. Through the parampara, it's ever fresh. When it's through the parampara from Srila Prabhupada, our current link to the parampara. There's lots of other conversations happening, different paramparas. There's other conversations that are happening. So we can be safe and sheltered in Srila Prabhupada's conversation through the parampara. And so in a court, so he's Prabhupada saying a good lawyer will if there's a previous precedent that has been set by the court, then the lawyer all he needs to do is prove his case, to make his case match up with the previous precedent. He doesn't need to try the whole case again. He doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. he can just prove that his case is in line with the previous judgment, previous precedent set by the court, and then it's much, much simpler. Doesn't need to take much trouble to establish his case. So this is our position, that we don't need to give much, taking much trouble to establish our case. All we need to do is just make sure that our conversation is in accordance with the Parampara, the conversation of the Parampara, and then it's bona fide, then it's following the authorities. So this is the Parampara system. Learned authorities follow it without manufacturing rubbish interpretations. Spiritual gossip, Anandini said. Yeah, so this is fully transcendental gossip. Like, did you hear what? So that's what's happening is like, so Dear Govinda gave the example of like, so we've been talking about material creation. So this is the end of the second canto, material creation. And so the conversation has been about material creation. And then the sages, let me try like, well, wait, I heard you say something about King Vidura and Maitreya Rishi. We want to hear about that. That's the juicy stuff. And so that's in the previous verse. Prabhupada says that it appears that the rishis headed by Saunaka were more inclined to hear transcendental subjects, which are on a higher level than the physical. So they were more like, okay, we're hearing about this, but we want the juicy stuff. Go back to the good. Let's get back to the good part. Let's get back to the juicy part. So this is transcendental gossip, conversation about a conversation, because that's what actually, like in a coaching conversation, we kind of focus on. We want to focus on what's happening with the client, what's happening with you. We don't want to hear about somebody else's conversation or somebody else's experience, because then it can be kind of gossipy. Like you're talking, like we want to, what's your experience and what's happening for you? But these subject matters is fully transcendental to engage in spiritual gossip. So what? Okay, so the quality of our conversation, our life is going to be a series of conversations. Basically, we're always going to be having conversations, and if we keep our conversations in the line of the Parampara, Vishnu Prabhupada, then we'll be successful. We don't need to give so much effort to creating a new conversation to follow the previous conversation. Now I have a story to tell. So it's a little bit changing gears, but I think we'll find it's in connection with some previous classes. So I'm going to tell a story about Bilvamangala Thakur that we have a men's reading group. We have a long way to go to catch up with the Vaishnavis reading group. So men, this is it. Come on, step up, and we could suggest the time, and we could change the time and the date. For you to join. We don't have any attachment to time and date. We have a men's reading group. We're reading Nectar of Devotion, and in the Prabhupada mentions Bilvamangala Thakur several times. Rupa Goswami mentions, and Prabhupada is translating and giving his comment purports on it. His conversation about Rupa Goswami's conversation about many different conversations. It's a compilation. So Prabhupada just mentioned Bilvamangala Thakur, but didn't go into the story. So I was like, we should tell the story. I'll tell the story, and there's some alignment there. So we'll have story time now. So
it's a juicy story.
It's a juicy story. Yeah, it's a juicy. It's kind of could be gossipy, and it's like it's a juicy story. So Bilvamangala Thakur was a very well-to-do, well-off, very kind of in a saintly position by birth, a Brahmana in South India. So he was by position a saintly person. And he was saintly. We know for sure that his previous birth, he had to attain a high position through his austerity, devotion to have that kind of birth. So, but in this birth, as Bilvamangala Thakur, he became degraded and lusty, had these lusty desires that he would fulfill with prostitutes. And he had his main prostitute, her name was Chintamani. So this was, he was basically addicted. He's addicted to sex, to his lusty desires, and to Chintamani especially, this particular form. And so he was so addicted, we can see ourselves, this is the point of the story, let's see ourselves here. So he was so addicted, it was that addiction, it was like, whatever I'm doing, I'm just thinking about, when's the next time I'm gonna do the thing? You know, I can't wait to finish this so I can go and do the thing that I want to do. Like we can see ourselves here, but not present in life, you know, just waiting for the next thing. When am I going to get to do the thing I'm addicted to again? And so even Bilvamangala Thakur was so addicted that even after his father left his body and he performed his last rites, because he's a Brahmana, he's the son, and he performed the last rites for his father, the Shraddha ceremony. And still he's thinking, okay, when can I go meet with Chintamani? So he finishes the last rites, and then, okay, now I gotta go. And it's a storming night, raging storm. So but he's still undeterred. He's not gonna let anything get in the way. He's stubborn. We can also relate to this. Stubborn, thick-headed, whatever, addicted, just pushing through. No, the storm, he gets to cross a river to get to Chintamani's house. Clear intentions. What's our clear intention about? Yeah, so the clear intention is not intrinsically spiritual or positive. We can have clear intention about
he was intentional.
He was intentional. Well, clear intention may be a distinction, but he was definitely intentional. He definitely had a lot of intention. And so, so he has to cross this river. The river is raging, and torrential storm. It's just like there's no way to cross this river. But he crosses the river anyway. Trying to get to Chintamani, and then so. The way that the night is, the storm, basically Chintamani's closed up shop. It's like she's not expecting any visitors, but she knows that Bilvamangala Thakur would be coming to see her, but surely he's not coming in this storm or whatever. So she's closed up the walls, the gate, whatever, the door is closed up. So to get in, Bilvamangala Thakur has to climb over the wall to get there. So he's a Brahmana. In the middle of the night, torrential rainstorm. Brahmana is supposed to be saintly personality, the spiritual masters of society. So he's climbing up the wall. He's just like in a frantic, panic, kind of just addiction mode. And he grabs a rope to climb over the wall, but it's a snake. It's actually a cobra that he grabs. So you can imagine the cobra tries to get him. He's like almost attacked. He's undeterred. He climbs over the wall and gets to Chintamani's door. So she sees him here, and she's not expecting. Of course, Bilvamangala is not coming tonight. And so she sees him in this Brahmana in this kind of puny, pathetic situation, just torn. Imagine clothes are torn, whether it's a cobra bite or soaked and just kind of pathetic. And so Chintamani is a prostitute. She happens to be a devotee of Krishna. She's a prostitute devotee of Krishna. So we say, what is that? Prostitute devotee of Krishna. how does that work? Well, just like we said, so conversations are like one of the oldest forms of pastime and enjoyment. Another form of enjoyment, pastimes, the oldest occupation, so it's called prostitution, is the oldest occupation. And so in the Vedic age, there is prostitution that is in Varnashram Dharma. So Varnashram is meant to meet people where they're at and support them on the next, to rise up to the higher level, to rise up to the next level. Meet people where they're at according to their psychophysical nature, empathy, meeting them where they're at, and then supporting them to rise up through the modes, ultimately transcendental. And so I think Laura was asking a question in previous class about, like, she was sharing about feeling discouraged, And so like that's this Varnashram system, which we've commonly known as like the caste system from India, was degraded into that. But the essence of Varnashram is that there's a way to structure society, structure community, structure human societies, in that a way that everyone's met where they're at, getting their needs met, and then they're supported to rise to a higher level, rise up the most into transcendence. So even there's a place for prostitution in Varnashram because basically it's going to happen anyway. That's the idea, is that it's going to happen anyway. So give some facility, give a structure to it, and then so we see it. So we'll go on with the story because it gives an example of the essence of Varnashram Dharma. So Chintamani was a devotee of Krishna. And so she saw this Brahmana. This is a Brahmana. He's just addicted to sex, prostitution. I'm a prostitute. He's addicted to me. This is a pathetic position. She said, the way that you're lusting after this body, this bag of flesh and bones, this liquid beauty is another story that we could tell that similar, that could be relative. You're lusting after this bag of bones and flesh. If you had that same desire and attraction for Krishna, then your life would be successful, because she saw how committed, how persevering he was. Mm-hmm. So in this moment, Chintamani was Bilvamangala's guru, and later on he writes songs glorifying Chintamani as his guru. So this is the essence of Varnashram Dharma. And this is the essence of that he's going to the prostitute, meet his need, whatever he's got, wherever he's at. And then she's a devotee of Krishna, and she supports him to rise to a higher level. And so it's not the degraded caste system of just like, well, he's a Brahmin by birth, she's a prostitute. No, in that moment, the essence of Varnashram, in that moment, a prostitute was the guru for the Brahmana. So that's the essence, the consciousness matters. So Bilvamangala, we know she was the guru in that moment because he took it to heart. He transformed his heart, transformed his consciousness. He accepted completely. And so he made the resolution to go to Vrindavan to be immersed for Krishna's pastimes. So Bilvamangala Thakur is on his way to Vrindavan. So he's in South Indian Brahmin. Vrindavan's in North India. So to travel there takes days, weeks, whatever to get there. So the custom is that another Brahmin family would take him in, and we can imagine householders taking him in along the way. So he's on his way to Vrindavan, and so we can see ourselves again in Bilvamangala Thakur. Okay, so now he's committed, he's got his direction, he's got his goal, and he's on the way, he's on the right path. But then there's a wife of this Brahmana that's very attractive. Wait a minute, maybe I get, so then he gets distracted, and he's lusting after this Brahmana's wife. So So the wife, the woman, she goes to her husband and says, "Oh, this Bilva Mangala, he's coming after me, he's pursuing me. What do I do?" And so this Brahmana, he's like, "Well, this is a saintly person, Bilva Mangala Thakur, according to his position, and he's by birth and his position, what he should be. This is a saintly person. You serve him. Basically, just serve this saintly person." So she goes there. She goes to him, and so and like, how may I serve you? So he's so there's opportunity here. So he says, basically like, let down your hair. And so she has like pins in her hair, keeping her hair up. Give me the pins. Give me those pins. So Bilva Mangala Thakur is coming to his senses. He's realizing his error of his ways. So he takes the pins and he stabs out his eyes. He stabs out his eyes because he realizes that, oh God, I'm on my way to Vrindavan. I got my goal in mind, Krishna in mind, and then I'm just being distracted and attracted to still these lesser desires, these material eyes. These are my worst enemy. So he stabs out his eyes. So now he's blind. He's blind and makes it to Vrindavan somehow. Makes it to Vrindavan. So he's in Vrindavan, and he actually perfects his worship, perfects his sadhana, perfects his meditation, his devotional practice, and he's playing the veena, and he's absorbed in bhajans, kirtans, singing in Vrindavan. And there's a young boy, a Brajabasi, the resident of Vrindavan, young boy between the ages of 11 to 16 years old, like young boy who's coming and helping Bilva Mangala Thakur, the blind man. So he's like, "Oh, sir, I'll take you to a place to rest, to sit, a nice place for you to do your bhajan, saintly person." He brings him milk. Bilva Mangala Thakur, he's very satisfied with this boy serving him. And so he asks, he's blind, so he wants to know, tell me about yourself, your features, what do you do? And what do you do here in Vrindavan? And so he's describing, he herds cows, and he's a cowherd boy, and and he has a peacock feather or whatever. So he's describing himself, and he's like, "Oh wow," Bilva Mangala Thakur's like, "Wow, oh, this is reminding me of Krishna." He's like immersed. He's like, relishing, like, "Oh, you're such a dear boy. You remind me of Krishna." And this is so supportive. So come to find out, actually, Bilva Mangala Thakur had so much perfected his sadhana, his bhakti, his meditation, that he had actually entered into the pastimes of Krishna. This was Krishna himself coming to serve him personally. And so Bilva Mangala Thakur, he entered into these pastimes, especially between Radha and Krishna. Krishna, at this age, 11 to 16, Kishora, the Kishora age group, before, in the Vedic time, at that time, the age right before getting married, according to that system. So just the end of boyhood, right? So he was engaged in these pastimes, Radha and Krishna, the loving affairs, and actually he revealed a lot of the Madhurya, the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. And so the point that I want to emphasize is that for Bilva Mangala Thakur had so many lusty desires. And for him to enter into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, he had to stab out his eyes. So he didn't bring his lusty desires into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So this is a point, along with, I think, Dear Govinda's first point, some conversations that I've been hearing around. So Bilva Mangala Thakur revealed a lot of the intimate pastimes with Radha and Krishna, that, and then we have this term sahajya that comes up. That's one definition or one description of someone who's in sahajya, who is a sahajya, that they're kind of too eager to engage, to be immersed in the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna and the gopis, when they're not ready or kind of prematurely, or bringing their lusty desires into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So we can ask ourselves, like, if we want to enter into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, are we willing to stab out our eyes to do so? And if we're not, then maybe we're not ready. We're not ready to enter into those really intimate, loving affairs, at least directly. Now, Srila Prabhupada, if we try to jump to the conversation, we try to jump ahead of the conversation. If we try to jump ahead of the conversation and go into Bilvamangala Thakur's conversation with about Radha and Krishna's pastimes, then we're gonna miss it. We're gonna bring our lusty desires in. But if we follow the conversation down the line to Srila Prabhupada, then we can enter into those pastimes, because Prabhupada gives us a safe way to enter into those pastimes for Radha and Krishna. And we have the gopis. And so actually Prabhupada in a class, Prabhupada said, let's check this chat. Wow, Jim said wow. Don't know when he said that. Are we stabbing out the eyes? Maybe?
Quite a shocking graphic pastime.
So
I like the point you make regarding that pastime.
Yeah. So Prabhupada gives away, in a class he was speaking about meditation in the class, like the kind of closed eye meditation, withdrawing the senses, the yogic withdrawing the senses in. And he said, like, okay, because we're afraid of seeing, like Bill Mangala Thakur, maybe we're afraid of seeing a woman that might distract us, Maya might distract us, beautiful form of a woman. He said, well, what's the use of closing the eyes? You close the eyes, you'll see a beautiful woman in your mind. What's the use of closing your eyes? So Prabhupada said, well, he said, I'm here in this class. I imagine his disciples were there, other visitors, young girls, young women. I see these beautiful women in front of me. I see them as gopis. I see them as Krishna's gopis. That's a way to purify our vision, and also, to see them. Also, another pastime where I think what I heard from Dear Govinda, that somebody challenged, because Krishna has 16,000 wives, 16,108, right?
Yes, that's correct.
16,108 wives. And so some people actually criticize Krishna for that, believe it or not. And so this man brought up some kind of criticism about that. And then the gopis, the rasa dance, Krishna's dancing with gopis are other people's wives and like that. And so why is Krishna dancing with other people's wives, other men's wives? And so Prabhupada turned around on the man and said, why are you dancing with Krishna's wife? Meaning that his wife is actually Krishna's wife. So why are you enjoying Krishna's wife? So he turned it around. So that's the way to see that actually every woman is Krishna's wife. Our wife is Krishna's wife. We should be enjoying our wife. Our success is to support our wife, singular, for each person, each man is one. That's recommended in this age. And so that we see our wife as Krishna's wife, and we want to support her to turn to Krishna and to revive her original relationship with Krishna. Because then they'll both be more satisfied. Krishna will be more pleased, and then our wife will be more pleased also. It'd be better for us too, because then Krishna takes responsibility. We don't need to take responsibility. So And so that's as men, as men, is for our wives, for ideal. Chanaka Pandits recommended that we see every woman as our mother. So that's why we address Mataji, Mata, Mother Malini, Mother Rukmini, Mother Payal, Mother Anandini, Mother Kim, Mother Rohini's in there, and Mother Kara. So we see every woman as our mother. And so mother is our first guru. The mother is always the first guru, the first spiritual master, the first teacher. So it's like an honored, respectful position to hear from mother, to honor, to respect and protect mothers. And then there's some women that we don't see as mother, like our wives. So that's different. We should see our wife as Krishna's wife. And maybe there's other women that, if we're authentic, we don't see as mother, and they're not our wife or whatever. That's possible, theoretically at least. We can imagine that could happen. And so then we see them as Krishna's gopis, and that we can support them to. That's how we can take that kind of propensity for a man to be with a woman, conversation with a woman, or whatever, and exciting and pursuing whatever. Take that energy and preaching out like that. Chintamani was preaching. That's basically Chintamani, the prostitute. That was her form of outreach. That was her form of outreach. It's like meeting people where that Savatov is kind of like that. probably not the best thing to say plainly, but Savatov is Varnashram really. So Varnashram is a preaching, and Savatov is a great example of Varnashram, and it meets people where they're at. Here, we'll learn about the mode of sattva. Learn these practical tools and skills and relationship ways to have conversations, ways to have communication that will increase your life satisfaction. Because we know that the mode of sattva increases life satisfaction and decreases stress and depression.
Research has indicated.
And so then we give this mode of sattva. Basically, in all kind of marketing, advertising, people want to either gain some pleasure or remove some pain. They want relief from some pain, or they want to gain some pleasure. So here's sattva, these communication skills. These can increase life satisfaction and reduce anxiety, relieve anxiety, and meet people where they're at. And then the soul comes alive. Naturally, it grows. There's a desire for transcendental topics, just like these rishis have a desire for transcendental topics. The soul comes alive, and there's a desire for transcendental topics, for spiritual topics. So that's outreach. That's good preaching. So that's Chintamani. So good to go back to the point of that. Yeah. So Chintamani, devotee of Krishna, whatever the profession, is a devotee of Krishna, meeting people where they're at and supporting them to come closer to Krishna. That's a guru. So to see every woman as mother, to engage, if we see women as Krishna's gopis, they need to be more satisfied, returning back to the relationship with Krishna. Hare Krishna. So we're going to have a conversation. So I started the conversation, and I welcome to join in, and any questions, comments, or keep the conversation going. Hare Krishna. I'll read the verse again. Sutta vacha ragya parikshita pristo yadavocha mahamuni tadvobidasya srinuta ragya prasna nusarata. Sri Sutta Goswami explained, I shall now explain to you the very subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively.
Hare Krishna.
Laura has her hand raised. Go ahead, Laura.
Thanks for class. Okay, this feels a little not as deep, but it just came up for me when you were speaking about the the wives that Krishna has, right? And I like the example, like, yeah, for men to see, or for us all to see women as mothers, or all being Krishna's wives. But my question is, because a friend asked me like a few years ago when I was starting to explore Krishna consciousness, she had like a very quick judgment, because she's like, I don't like that. I don't like Krishna because he has all these wives. And so I'm curious what you would say, or anyone else is like, not like, yeah, like a quick reply, or like, I guess I feel like I received some something like from what you shared, but I'm curious if there's more, like, yeah, for someone who has that judgment, what would be like maybe you even shared it in your talk, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you could say something around that, and like, yeah, for me to like solidify that even more, and like understand that in a way to
Right.
maybe even share it with someone who's not like exploring Krishna consciousness. That's what like I'm questioning right now. Yeah.
I'll give a response, and then others will share, opportunity for others to share. But yeah, it's like Bilvamangala Thakur, that he had to stab out his eyes to really enter into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, because otherwise he'd bring his lusty desires, his own material contamination into the pastimes of Radha Krishna and the gopis, the loving affairs between Krishna and his gopis. So that's basically it. That like, that's my response, is like that we're not going to understand it, and we're not going to get it to the extent that we're bringing our material conception of wife, and this is those person's wife, and this is that, you know, that's my wife is mine to enjoy, and others shouldn't enjoy. You know, it's like all these material conceptions that we have. So as far as a quick response, I don't have a quick response, but the long path would be like, yeah, there's a way to understand those pastimes. Prabhupada gave a quick response that was like, why are you enjoying other people's wife, another man's wife? That's a quick response. And then, to see that, so Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So everything is a part of Krishna. So it's like there's an example of like the bank, like going into the bank and renouncing the money in the bank, like, okay, all these millions of dollars in this bank, I renounce them. Like, I give them up. It's like, well, these were never yours to begin with. Who cares? So that's the material realization of like, yeah, none of those weren't anyone else's wives to begin with. That was illusion. That's an illusion that anything is separated from Krishna or not originally Krishna's. That's all illusion. So those are some of my responses. Maybe.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, and I think I'm already having some insight and seeing where I'm different from where I'm now, from when my friend first said that. But I just want to say it out loud, like, yeah, it's like, yeah, there's a difference, material world, spiritual world. Like, I could bring that concept in, and then, yeah, it's like, if God is all pervading, all pervasive, Krishna being all of it, then he's in everyone, and each of those wives, or in the husband. And also, yeah, like what you said, like bringing the comedic part of it, like, why are you enjoying someone else's wife or husband, or however that
Krishna's husband too, right? Or
yeah, or like, yeah. And I get that. For me, it's the biggest thing is like, yeah, it's like spiritual, material, different worlds. It's the concept is so much bigger, and it's not as simple and on the material plane like that. So that feels good for me to even like have some understanding, because I'm, yeah, thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anandini had her hand raised but didn't put it down. I'm not sure she wants to. Yes.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Well, you already touched on what I was going to share, so I put my hand back down. But I want to say thank you for your class. I enjoyed it a lot. I liked how you made so many connections between things like in this world that we could consider unspiritual, like gossip or prostitution, and you made the connection to, yeah, everything can be connected to God, to Krishna, and it becomes spiritual. And I was just going to comment that in a sense also all husbands are Krishna, or all men are Krishna's wives. If we look at the soul as female, and Krishna enjoys through us, whether we're in a male or female body. So, but I think you already touched on that. So
I say we're all Krishna's husband, but yeah, it's more accurate to say we're all Krishna's wives, originally Krishna's servants, and
be enjoyed.
Yeah, we're all meant to be.
And I think from what I was thinking, so what does that mean for women? How do they look at men? And I think, I'm not sure if it's accurate, but what I understand is like women look at men as their son.
Well,
maybe.
I think that's the safe way. Also, I know Prabhu. I mean, there's Prabhu, which I think Prabhu also Prabhupada used Prabhu for women also, and we can use Prabhu for women. And so Prabhu is like it's like teacher, master. Oh, Molly has something to say.
Just a joke. It's not very difficult.
It's not very difficult
For women.
to see women as son. It's not very difficult to see women as son. It's Molly's joke. It's not very difficult to see men as women's sons. So I'm not strong with the sun, to see them as the sun.
She's calling us immature.
For men to see women as mother, it's logical that for women they'd see, okay, this is like seeing as my son.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And then I think Malini's joke was, the way I interpret that was like the lust and that intensity of desire. It's not that it's not present with women, but probably it's more of an issue for men. Maybe that's like easier, more important for us to like, okay, let's train around. For women, it's not as big of a deal. Like, I have to make sure I'm not looking at this man. They're like, okay, this guy's kind of it's not that difficult. That's what her joke.
It's a challenge for us to see every woman as mother, but for mother to see every son, that's not so difficult.
We're not as like amazing as we think we are. We're not enticing as we want to think we are.
Molly's laughing. Molly's laughing from the kitchen.
Is that right?
This is agreed.
I remember this was in my state college days when pretty much I went there, only for prashad and stuff, but I would hear some of the philosophy discussions and back and forth. And I remember, Stamba Prabhu was giving a class and discussion, and so there was one woman, like I was, whatever, I was like 19, 20, maybe a year older than me, and a young woman there, and one day she said, well, I'm a woman, and then she went on with some question, kind of challenging. And then his response was, so you think you're a woman? So that's core to this discussion and your responses. But of course, we don't want artificial transcendence of conceptions, but this whole idea of male or female, human species like that, right? So in order to enter into these transcendental topics, we need to at least be on the path of understanding that we're not the bodies, including the designations related to the bodies. I'm old, I'm young, I'm fat, I'm skinny, like that. I'm male, I'm female. And so, just following up on aspects of this discussion. So so depending on, we can meet the person Laura is talking to, so we can meet them where they're at. Here, that's like disturbing for you. That appreciate so many empathy, and then depending on our sense of what they're ready to hear. In these ancient wisdom traditions, a conception of God, conception of the supreme we can have a conception of the Almighty, and but a conception of Supreme is the supreme enjoyer, right? Like you want to enjoy, I want to enjoy, we all want to enjoy, and that's natural. Now, like when spiritual life means not to enjoy, but then, okay, a conception of God, a definition of God is a supreme enjoyer. So from that point of view, and again, related to the discussion of what Minnie shared already, from that point of view, so just like analogously, a mother gets more enjoyment when she sees that her child is fed than she does by eating her own tasty meal, right? So the mother enjoys, but the mother enjoys more than seeing the child is fed. So that's an analogy. So philosophically, not materially, philosophically, kind of like enjoyer is Purusha, male, the enjoyed is Prakriti, female. So philosophically, we're all female. And we get our enjoyment when we're serving the supreme enjoyer. So in that sense, we're all meant to be enjoyed by Krishna's wives in some way. We're all meant to be enjoyed by the supreme enjoyer. And then again, Krishna is a name for the supreme. It's just like Allah or Christ or Adonai. So these are ways that are, because in one sense, to respond meaningfully to that sort of objection or resistance, we need to go beyond that which is superfluous. We need to be at least a little profound and deep. What is the definition of the supreme, like the absolute? One definition is a supreme enjoyer. Okay, so then our nature is intrinsically Prakriti. So these are just some follow-up thoughts there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's to have that conversation, for that conversation, talk about conversations. For that conversation to go anywhere, it needs to be in line with these conversations that we're talking about, Prabhupada, the Acharyas, and Parampara, and then where Prabhupada starts, the ABCs and the Bhagavad Gita starts. So the distinction between spirit and matter, that we're not the body, and then the nature of the absolute and our relationship to the absolute. And so it's like, if those things aren't present, then we're not really going to understand. No one's really going to understand Krishna and 16,108 wives, unless we're at least endeavoring to go there.
At least intellectually be willing to be open to go there.
Right.
We might not have realization, but at least be open-minded to play with these concepts.
Otherwise, we're starting with the wrong numbers in the calculation. So it's like to start from the foundation, you got to start with the right numbers. Tyler?
Yeah, I really appreciated that point of like the ABCs and those fundamental distinctions, and even in the Bilva story of like stabbing out his eyes, like even that pastime, I think it's like that's kind of esoteric, right? Because we don't want to be like denying our senses. Actually, we want to engage all our senses in serving Krishna. So in a sense, somebody could hear that story and see like, well, that doesn't make sense. Even that story is kind of advanced, like within the. You have to have some basic understanding of.
It's not something we want to imitate.
Right. You necessarily lead in with that one, or if you're preaching or sharing with someone who's not already somehow connected with Krishna consciousness or familiar or favorable to Krishna consciousness, I guess.
That's like one of the points I was endeavoring to make, and maybe I didn't make it completely. But Bill Mangala, like he's not listed like on our Parampara. So and it is, and he's not our current link to the disciplic succession. He's not. So we don't want to follow him. We don't want to follow his. But the idea is that he was able to enter directly into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna.
That's I really like the point you made. Yeah. So like with all these pastimes, including some extent with Prabhupada, we want to know what's the principle to follow and what's the detail not to imitate. Right? What's the principle to follow? And the principle is because he was so spiritually desperate to really serve Krishna purely that he was willing to undergo so much pain, so we can humbly say like, I'm not there. Now, devotees who are there, not that they do such an extreme thing, but it indicates he was just like, he was so spiritually, and he had such, like he had such disgust for his material desires, not in a way wallow in shame and guilt, but in a way that moved him to some full intention. I went into Krishna's pastime by serving Krishna. And so that's the principle. And we don't want to imitate the details of that pastime, obviously. But so that's what impacted me by how you shared about that pastime from Pride. That Bhova Mangala he was ready to undergo so much material agony to serve Krishna purely. So where do I stand in relation to Bhova Mangala? And I can talk about Krishna's past, like I'm far from that.
Yeah.
And so that not to move us to be discouraged, but to move me to, okay, let me aspire to that really wanting, that pure desire to serve Krishna, that I'm willing to undergo any material austerity. I'm far from it. Okay, let me come 1 inch closer today than yesterday. And so, but that's a basic principle for all the pastimes. What's the principle to follow? And what's the detail to not imitate?
Even for me, like austerity can be kind of I know that it's this big thing. It's this like important, like valuable thing. It's this difficult thing. Like recently, to clarify for me around the term austerity, we were talking about the Olympians. And so for me, that's like the highest level of athletic achievement in the world and sports. And so what does it take to be an Olympian? What does it take to be a gold medal Olympus? It's like austere. It's like eat like a scientist, just wake up super early, train super hard, be in pain, be suffering basically all the time, just constantly stretching yourself physically. So what does spiritual Olympics look like? If that's my goal, to take we've already got this process is the elevator. It's the elevator.
Yeah.
Bhakti yoga is, and this parampara that you're mentioning, they are the elevator. Like through them, we're going directly. And so that takes some austerity. Like for me, it takes great austerity. Reading is just period. Just reading anything is austerity. It's not like I have entertaining books. Oh, those are easy, and then spiritual books are hard. Just reading, like concentrating for me is an austerity. So. So like I'm not planning to be Olympic spiritualist or anything, but just to put austerity in context for me, that's a great concept example, for me to use around like, and then other to the story you shared. It's like there's so many points, there's so many things I'm thinking about, I want to share about. I like to talk about sex life, basically we're in that vein, talking about this lust, grihasta, family life, talking about being surrendered, talking about intelligence, male and female intelligence is somewhere else we could go. We could explore that, because right now, I'm on the side of like women are way more intelligent, at least spiritually, like they're our first guru, they're more surrendered, they're naturally to be enjoyed. And then the male energy is the enjoyer energy. So I'm confused. Krishna's the only male, like a male body, and I want to enjoy more. So if I'm going to get another body, should I choose a female body? Because it's naturally going to be helping me more in my spiritual progress. But then there's things about women intelligence, like they need to be protected. Yeah. So then it's like there's less intelligence in that way. So just reflecting about those classes and those points that some of us are familiar with, and then one more thing along Bilva Mangala Thakur's journey, he meets the other Brahmana, and the Brahmana gives his wife. So that Brahmana, he's so surrendered, and yet maybe ignorant in the Varnashram type of things, like, oh, just serve this guy because he was born, because he was born into a saintly position. And he was kind of in between. He was literally in transition from where he had been just recognized by birth and then actually earning that recognition. And in that in between, he does the eye stabbing, but the Brahmana, I was thinking about that Brahmana is both surrender, that his selflessness about his possession, his wife, like he just to me, like wife is like most cherished, protected possession in a sense, my duty to protect my wife. And then he serve him whatever he wants. He's so surrendered, and yet at the same time, there could be some ignorance about like, well, is the Varnashram system or is the caste system is what I'm thinking. Like the caste system is, well, that's like, what we have to do, even though maybe this person's not pure objectively, but by birth, the status. So we could have that whole conversation about caste system versus Varnashram system. You brought up like so much, I don't know where to go, but mention,
topics.
Yeah.
You want to go?
I'll just follow up on the Olympian point real quick. Like I had the point with like in athletics, to be an Olympic gold medalist, or just to get the Olympic, so much austerity, and kind of like, wow, if I was as dedicated to Krishna conscious as the Olympic athletes were, like, wow, I'd be really advanced. And so like, so we can admire them, for them. And then if we look, like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, like of all sciences, I'm the spiritual science of the self. So this thing, like to be like a pure lover of God, a pure servant of God, it's such a far greater, more profound goal than to be an Olympic medalist, or to be successful in business, or to be a great scholar, or whatever goal, but to be pure. So we can expect to actually make substantial progress in purifying the heart and serving Krishna with love. We can expect it actually requires even more determination than an Olympic medalist. Like, it's not a cheap thing. Now, fortunately, Nehavi Promo Nasho State, Pachabayana Vichite, Svapamap Yasti Dharma said, try to Matovea. It's not all or nothing. Whereas Olympics, it's kind of like you made it or you didn't, kind of. But like, okay, so even if in a casual, lazy way, I chanted Hare Krishna, okay, I had some prasad, that's for our eternal benefit. But if we really want to make progress, we need to be like more determined than the top athletes are for their goal. If we really want to make progress, and it's substantial. So it's not a cheap thing.
Yeah, a big part of Devin, you're sharing, to put austerity in perspective of like, what is the standard or what is required? What would be needed? It's just not like, because also that can be like, to Laura's point that can be kind of discouraging. Like, oh, I need to be Olympic. Oh, I can't. I'm not going to be an Olympic athlete intensity. But at least it puts it in perspective. Like, well, that's the goal. And so let me be like, let me be more serious and increase my, commitment. And because anything is better than nothing. Anything is not lost in.
There's no loss or diminution.
No loss or diminution. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Hare Krishna. Happy birthday. Thank you.